Today I have a very good topic to discuss with you guys. The topic name is homeostasis. Alright, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the class. Let us begin with giving proper definition for homeostasis. Having constant internal environment in an organism is homeostasis. Internal environment refers to tissue fluid and blood. And let's say you're going outside in a hot sun or very cold weather. Okay, we don't worry about what's happening inside because homeostasis make sure internal environment is kept constant no matter what's happening outside, what changes happens at external environment. Moving on next, we should really give importance to the importance of homeostasis. So to make it easy to remember, I have came out with the mnemonics, which is SOCAS. S stands for survive, O for optimum, C for constant, A for adapt, and S for system. Now, survive, we have this keyword, remember this keyword, basic function. That means homeostasis is a basic function for organism to survive. For example, if there's no homeostasis, the particular species gonna die or very hard to survive, right? So remember, without homeostasis, an organism cannot survive. Moving on next, homeostasis ensures optimum internal environment, right? So we will look into detail in coming slides, right? So next, homeostasis maintain constant internal regardless what are the changes outside, right? So it just make sure our internal parts are in constant situation, all right? Next, animals which living in extreme condition, for example in desert is very hot or in polar region is cold, at that particular animals are well adapted because of homeostasis, right? So adapting to extreme conditions, which is cold and hot, homeostasis is important. And last is homeostasis ensures efficient, that means no waste, right? Efficient means zero waste, right? So when you talk about 100% efficient, zero waste of biological system, right? So biological system that we have in the body should be efficient, right? So that is important. Okay, now let's look into detail on the first importance of homeostasis. Okay, now any cell and organism, right? For example, human being, it can be animal or it can be plant. Any cell is exposed to different environmental factors. So this phenomena, we call this as open biological system. So remember, open biological system is whereby a cell or organism is always exposed to different environmental factors. Now what we have here is a modulator. This open biological system is well equipped with a modulator. This modulator sets different physiological parameters, right? So now let's look at what is physiological parameters. We have four. One is temperature, pH, water potential, and specific ion concentration, right? So for now we don't worry about what is all these physiological parameters, but now you have to remember these four physiological parameters, right? Now modulators, what they do is they set different predetermined setting. Example is our body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, right? Now any changes that happens to the temperature, it will be adjusted. This is very, very important for survival. Next, homeostasis is important to ensure optimum internal environment. Okay, so like optimum refers to not too cold, not too hot, right? Not too much, not too less, right? Now when you have internal environment which is optimum, all the cells are going to function well. Apart from that, the cell will survive well. And most importantly, when you have optimum internal environment, the cells are going to reproduce. You always remember this, any animal or even plant, they are not going to reproduce. They are not going to produce offspring if they don't feel optimum internal environment. Alright. Now when this happens, this leads to extinction of that particular species. So now optimum internal environment is very important if the species wants to survive. There's an example here. We have to have body temperature which is about 37 degrees Celsius. Right now, why 37 degrees Celsius is this particular temperature is optimum for protein, right? So otherwise, if it's too hot like 60 degrees Celsius, the protein gonna be denatured. Now, why we are giving too much attention on protein is because your enzyme, your hormone is all made up of protein. Now imagine when you are too cold, let's say internal environment is too cold or too hot, your hormone and enzyme gonna denature. Okay. Now maintaining 37 degrees Celsius, make sure your cell to function well and survive and to reproduce. Now we have two words here. which is endotherm and ectotherm, right? Endo means inside, ecto means outside. So that is easy to remember, in and out, all right? Now, endotherm means heat produced inside the body, while ectotherm is heat which is produced outside the body. Now, endotherm always responds more rapidly, means more frequently compared to the ectotherm. When we have homeostasis, no matter what happens outside, external environment may change frequently, but homeostasis makes sure we have almost constant condition inside the body. Again, I'm going to talk about body temperature because that is easy to be understood. So no matter what happens outside, your body temperature is still 37. Now let's talk about these animals which lives in harsh environment, too hot sometimes or too cold. Polar bear, camel, kangaroo rat. So these animals are well adapted to their nature where they live because of homeostasis. As a living thing, our body needs the most efficient biological system to survive. Any animal or any plant, even human, if their biological system is not very efficient, the species gonna extinct soon. So remember this, homeostasis makes sure our biological systems works 100%, almost 100% efficient. And when you talk about 100% efficient, that means zero wastage happened. That means the amount of oxygen that we take in, is it used, all is used, or is there any waste going on there? All right. So for example, dinosaur. All right. So dinosaur is extinct now. One of the reasons is because the biological system are not working in efficient way. So how was it? We have begun with giving definition for homeostasis, and by now we should know what is internal environment. And we also discussed a lot about, in detail, about the importance of homeostasis. Remember this, without homeostasis, the species not going to survive. Let's go into how this homeostasis works in mammal. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to see the homeostatic control in mammal. And why specifically mammal, I will discuss in the next slide. But let's go through what are the three main organs involved in homeostatic control. Number one, receptor, which receives the impulse or the changes. And then we have the brain, which interprets the changes and will decide what kind of action to be taken. And this message will be sent to the effector, right? So of course this is not very new for us, okay? But we're going to go in detail how this thing works. Okay, here as we see, there's a receptor. Let's begin by giving the definition of what is receptor, all right? Now, when a student answer receptor receives impulse, see, this is not proper definition. You are just giving what does it do, all right? Now, proper definition for receptor is special cell, all right? Receptor is a special cell. So always start from this word. Receptor is a special cell, and what does it do is it detects changes, and next it does send impulse to the brain. All right, so it detects changes, send impulse to the brain is what it does. And what is receptor is a special cell. And I have given here about 3 examples of receptors, and we are more interested in chemoreceptors, right? So now in hypothalamus, there's a receptor which can detect the changes in water potential, and we call this as osmoreceptor. ADH, antidiuretic hormone, located at posterior. The posterior means the position where the where the receptor is located in pituitary gland. Third one is thermoreceptors. Of course, this is for temperature. So now it is located one in skin and also the hypothalamus, right? So hypothalamus, pituitary gland is very important, and we're going to call this for now as a control center. As we discussed earlier, receptor detects the changes and send the impulse message to the brain. Now what does brain do is brain receives the impulse and will project it to the control center. Right now, if you realize, control center is not new because we have seen this in breathing cycle as well. All right. So in control center, it coordinates the impulse. That means it will do the decision making. It will do the interpretation. All right. What kind of change it is, what action needs to be taken, and we can talk a lot about this, how this interpretation is done. I can give a small idea on this because this is a huge topic to talk about. Let's say when a brain receives an impulse, detects change, there's a change happening. Now it goes to the control center. Brain have to coordinate the impulse. That means it needs to decide what kind of change it is and what kind of action is more suitable. And this is done through the old records that have been stored in our brain. And from there, it sends impulse to the effectors. Now effectors takes action. Giving definition for effector, it is muscles and glands. Okay, so this is definition for effector, right? Like receptor is a special cell, effector is muscles and glands. It receives the impulse from the control center just now and do the restoration. Okay, restoration means it makes correct changes, so the changes which is detected go back to the norm. Norm here means normal, right? For example, there's a change in body internal temperature. Now once receptor detected it, it will send to the brain. Now brain have to decide what to do, and it will send to muscles and glands. Right? Now how temperature and muscles are related? Okay, let me give you an example. Right? Now let's say you are in cold places. Right? You are in very cold place. Your receptor detect the changes. It sent to the brain. Brain will send to the muscle. You will shivering. Right? Shivering is an action of a muscle effector, which when you shiver, when movement happen, heat is produced. Right? So now after a while, restoration have to be placed. What we are seeing here is the parameters controlled by the system. Okay, so we're going to see about 6 different parameters. Remember just now there's a lorry picture where we have about 4 physiological parameters. So it is broken down into 6. Number 1 is glucose concentration, pH level, gaseous concentration, for example carbon dioxide and also oxygen, rate of heartbeat and breathing, and water potential inside blood and also inside the cell. Mammals are unique organism. Why? Because the internal environment is not static but dynamic. Now dynamic means movement, motion, right? So let's say you are studying physics, we know that dynamics is something to do with motion or movement, which means in biology we use the word dynamic here for physiological parameters change within narrow range. Right? For example, we can take an temperature again. Right? The optimum temperature is 37. It can rise up to 37.5, 37.6, 37.8, and maybe sometime 38. Now 38 is you have fever. Right? So that is uniqueness of a mammal. Our internal temperature, internal environment, and the physiological parameters changes. We can talk about pH, we can talk about glucose solution and gaseous concentration and so forth, right? So because of this, homeostasis plays a huge role to make mammals survive. Okay, so I have listed out, I have drawn the pathway how this thing works. Remember, there's a modulator that we have seen before. Modulator consists of receptor, brain, and also effector. Okay, so now incoming variation. So the word incoming variation is the changes that happens outside, right? And this is detected by receptor, and it's sent to control reference point, which in hypothalamus or in the brain, what we're going to see is predetermined setting. Okay, so the brain, like what I said just now, brain consists of predetermined setting. That means it have records on how much is the temperature should be, or what is the pH level should be, right? Now when there's change, brain decide what to do and will be sent to the muscle and glands, and it comes out as an original norm. Moving on further, homeostasis have 2 types of feedback. One is positive, one is negative. Negative feedback is mostly restoration. The student must remember, when we talk about negative feedback, when it rises, homeostasis pulls back to the norm. That means it's pulling down. Let's say a value goes down, homeostasis pull up, increases the value. Alright, now positive feedback doesn't work like that. Positive feedback, remember this word, encourages. Okay, negative feedback discourages. Okay, so what I mean by encourages is, let's say a value, a parameter increases, it keep increasing. On the other side, let's say a parameter is decreasing, in positive feedback the parameter going to decrease furthermore. So for positive feedback it encourages more, but negative feedback it will be discouraging. That means it will pull back to the norm. Now remember this, positive feedback is mostly synergetic. Okay, now synergy means combination, combine, right? Mostly synergetic effect. Now negative feedback is mostly restoration effect. So as we talked before, negative feedback does restoration body to its original condition. Example, if raised, process to reduce it will happen. Reduce it means the physiological parameters. If the physiological parameters lowered, process to increase the physiological parameters will happen. In both ways, restoration mechanism happens. But in positive feedback, If a physiological parameter raised, it will be further raised, and if it is reduced, it is further reduced. This is not a good thing most of the time, because it will lead to something else. So positive feedback leads to death, which the factors have escalated and eventually go to death. There are some positive things about positive feedback. We call this as cascade effect. Cascade effect happens on non-steroid hormones. Okay, so cascade effect is a positive feedback on non-steroid hormones, which brings quick response and produce a lot of glucose, right? So this is very important when someone is going through an extreme starvation, where the body is in low blood sugar level. Cascade effect will increase the glucagon, cortisol, and adrenaline. All right, take note this. Positive feedback is temporary, and positive feedback always brings synergetic effect, where two hormones works together. Example is when extreme starvation. Okay, we are at the end of this part 1 of homeostasis. All right, so in part 2 of this homeostasis topic, we're gonna cover more. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, and stay tuned, we're gonna have more. Bye.